Welcome to the Simply Strategic Ministry podcast, where we want to help you grow your ministry through simple strategy and scalable systems. I'm joined today for our very first episode with co-owner and founder Landon Reynolds.
Let's go.
It is good to have you in the studio.
SSM podcast, finally a reality. We've been talking about this a long time.
Dude, it has been actually a long time. And so I guess that's a great place to start. Many people don't know us. I know a few know us personally. But man, this podcast and really Simply Strategic Ministry starts about 10 years ago at a whiteboard in a conference room where we just one night drew a funnel. And I think we just kind of landed and said, hey, what if ministry really was just simple, strategic, and scalable on every level? And I feel like that was kind of the meeting that changed everything.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We kind of part of our story is that we worked together. Pat was a children's pastor, and I was the youth pastor, and Patrick always had a heart for students. So I just kept trying to basically pirate him to come help me in the youth ministry every week. And it helped that he really loved doing all that. But we had a growing ministry. We had a ministry that ended up growing from about 100 students to about 500 people, but we weren't really getting much bigger of a budget, much bigger staff. And so we just had to figure out how we're going to do things that are scalable and that are really in a system so that they're not based on us and based on, just getting more money or more people. And that's why we're doing SSM. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, it was just that moment of realization. If you have to get more to gain more, then you're always going to be limited by how much you can get. And that's Absolutely. Get more money, get more staff, get more facility even.
Yeah.
And so, man, I'll never forget just drawing that funnel and just the light bulb moment of this could work. Building a system that works for 100 and 200 and 300. That's scalable, that we could run in our sleep. It really changed the game. So this podcast really has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
This ministry of helping other people have that light bulb moment. For me, the lightning bolt, for me, that means a lot because it was like lightning struck at that moment. It was like, aha, we've got it. We can do this. And we saw it work, and then eventually went different ways. You're out of student ministry now. You're over creative and all the stuff that I don't even freaking know what you do anymore. But, went to a big church, multi-campus, got that experience myself now in Houston, Texas. And man, it's been a wild ride. So
somehow fate brought us back together.
No doubt. So if you're with us, man, welcome to the story. And we hope that our story gets to become your story and that you get to experience that same moment. So today, let's talk about our first episode topic, the thing I want to get into. And I hope you're ready because I picked a good one. I want to go to the deep end. I want to ruffle the feathers. I want to stir the pot. You know me.
We're going to keep this thing raw and unfiltered. We are we've already had the discussion. If we say something that's too far, we'll edit it out.
We'll go back and we are the opposite of other podcasts that say no edits. Dude, we're going to be edits galore. We got to keep our jobs. All right. Hey, listen, Here's the topic. I want to talk about the future of preparing and preaching sermons with AI.
The mark of the beast.
The devil himself.
It is him.
So if you are plugged in to media at all, you have heard of AI. You've probably heard of OpenAI, which resources ChatGPT. But there's actually tons of other AI out there with other applications from Notion to so many others. And so, it's just crazy that it seems like in the tech world, the church, capital C, seems a little bit always, a rotation or two behind. So tell our listeners what is AI, what does it do, and and how is the future going to change because of it?
Yeah, if you had asked me how does AI work, I have no idea.
Nobody knows.
It's still basically magic to me. But basically what AI is, for those of you who might be sleeping under a rock, AI is is definitely it's basically it's computer intelligence that simulates human intelligence, and so it is a network of systems and processes that are moving at such a fast pace that it's moving so fast that it's able to adapt and change almost like the human brain does, and so.
Yeah.
It's going to include natural language processing and speech recognition and just things that literally 20 years ago would have been seen as magic. And it's just because everything's moving so quickly. And so I forget the stat, I'd heard it on a podcast, but talking about how the latest version of Chat GPT, which is the one that a lot of people on social media have seen, is actually processing things almost as quick as the human brain now. And so we're getting so close to really, we're getting close to something that we've never experienced any power like this, especially power that's seen and can be used by just about anybody, which is just wild. That you can literally have ChatGPT draft up a text to your wife and send it. I don't know if you've seen any of those reels that are going around right now, those TikToks that are going around. They're funny, but it's just crazy what it can do.
Yeah. So I think for me, like, honestly, the first introduction I got to AI was really Tesla and the self-driving car, right? And at first it was, you put it in a lane, it won't get off the freeway. You have to turn the blinker on for it to switch lanes, but it's going to keep you from hitting other cars. And it's developed to, it's fully self-driving.
Sorry, we can't Tesla. Some of us aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, but that's my point. My point is, for so many people, they had to watch that AI from a distance and say, I can't afford $120,000 at the time electric vehicle. And then you have something like ChatGPT, and it's crazy and it's wild, but it's available to everybody. Like, anybody can get it. And for us, we got in on a beta trial. So we actually got some access beforehand, and we're talking about, dude, this is crazy. It was wild. I mean, I talked to somebody in the early stages, and they were like, hey, I don't know how to send this email to my boss and let them know that I really need to take these vacation days. And I was like, hey, let me show you something. And I just said, write a friendly worded email to my boss, but that is resolute, that I really need my vacation days approved. And dude, like that, it spit that email out, and they were like, what like evil is that? It was like they were immediately like, that's not right. Like, there's something wrong with that. And, and for marketing, if you wanted hey, give me 25 ideas about a blog post on how to parent with a biblical perspective, you could write that in, hit enter, and within under 3 minutes, you're going to have 25 ideas.
Yeah.
And then you can even comment, expand on idea number 5, and it's going to take that idea and expand it out. I had it write a 750-word article for me one time just to see if it could do it. And so it's incredible.
It's shocking. It really is. I don't know if we're going to get into this in the podcast, but I did a lot of sermon prep today. At the time of the day of this recording, the morning of, I worked on the sermon, and I used it to just help me do some research this morning. And it was just, I mean, it blew my mind. It literally, and I've been playing with this for months now. And even before ChatGPT came out, we were using tools here at my church, Foothills Church, just because I work in marketing, copywriting, and so that's kind of where a lot of this stuff is living right now. And so it was just, we've been using all these different tools, but I mean, it literally is mind blowing.
Yeah, so I think, the other thing is people are like, I had a conversation with our staff members today. I said, hey, podcast starts tonight. And they're like, what are you going to talk about? And I was like, I'm going to talk to Landon about AI. And they said, well, isn't it technically copyright? Like, is it copyright infringing? And to the best of my understanding, I think it just uses the internet as its brain and compiles everything it knows about the subject and puts it out in long form, or however you've asked it.
Yeah.
And so I guess that does drive, and we will get to your point here in a second about how AI is useful. But before we do that, I want to diagnose the fears. Like, people are afraid of AI, and they're projecting their fear as like anger, or maybe some of them are like, man, I'm not really sure how I feel about it because, I don't know if it's ethical. I don't know if it's just copy and pasting from other sermons and writing it in. My question is, why do you think people are so defensive or so skeptical about AI, especially when it comes to writing sermons?
Well, let's first off, before we address the writing sermons part, let's start by this. People hate change. Like,
Okay, but hold up. Let me push back on that idea.
okay.
Because I think I've heard that a lot, and maybe this is another podcast and we need to save it for another day. I disagree. I don't think people hate change. Because if I told you tomorrow that you were going to win $250 million from the lottery, you would say, man, that's great. It's going to what? Change my life. And so I think people love change. I think people fear things that are unknown and they can't control.
Yeah, so maybe that's a better way of saying people hate change, especially if they don't know where the end is. All
Yeah.
right, so it's very, $250 million, I know what $250 million is going to buy me.
Right.
I know, I got some ideas there. I may not know where this whole thing leads when it comes to, AI, but I think people just in general, whenever there's that unknown, they don't want to change from what they have to something that could be really, really awesome. It could be game changing, but it could do what Elon Musk thinks it might do, which is take over the world and robots kill us.
Yeah.
Terminator on us, Arnold Schwarzenegger coming after me. And so I think, I think Christians, especially, anything around tech, for whatever reason, like we have just been ingrained into and I don't know if it's we both serve in the Bible Belt. If it's just like a Bible Belt thing that any new technological advance is somehow the mark of the beast. Like the internet was the mark of the beast. The iPhone was the mark of the beast. Now it was the watch, and then Google Glass, and what's next? Is it the chip in your car? That's the mark of the beast. Now it's AI.
Yeah.
Everything's the mark of the beast. And if everything's the mark of the beast, nothing's the mark of the beast. So we are just saying it because we're afraid. And so Christians, we're really bad at jumping on new tech. And when really Christians in the Renaissance, we were leading in that. And it'd be cool to see that happen again today.
So I think a couple things, common ground there. Maybe our definitions of change are different. I agree with you, though. People fear the unknown.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. They I don't like to say people hate change because I watch people change all the time and they love it. They lose weight. They love it. They get a raise. They love it. They get a new job. They love it. I think they fear the things they don't know. I think they fear things that are outside of their control. And to talk about tech, and to your point, the church has never been full of people who have mastered technology. And so it always has been, we have to outsource this to that one guy who understands it. And think about even the way we treat our tech people on staff. They may be for audio and lighting, but if the internet goes down, who are you asking to fix it? You're just assuming that they know. And so I think church staffs are full of people who don't have expertise in technology, and that's fine because maybe they weren't called to that. And they have no idea what it's going to mean for the future. I remember as a teenager, right before I came to FC and we connected, and one of the questions that you even asked me was hey, what preachers are you watching on YouTube when I started the internship? But I remember when people were saying YouTube and sermons are now the devil because it's going to kill the local church because all the young people are just going to stay at home and watch YouTube sermons.
Yeah.
And so I think it goes back to, again, instead of the church jumping on and saying, hey, we prepare content every week. We have messaging every week. We can jump on YouTube. We can put our sermons on. There were a few churches who were doing it, and then the rest were skeptical. And so I just think it's always that era of, if we don't know, we're going to wait until we do know, and then we'll jump on it. And I remember, I won't name names, but I remember sitting in a meeting with you one time, and we had an idea. And dude, the idea, tell me if you remember this, honestly, if you do. If you don't, just say, I don't remember it. We were pitching Facebook live streaming.
Yes.
We were saying, hey, Elevation has Facebook live streamed their service.
It was mind blowing. You could live stream.
And it was we should do that. And the thought process in the room was, well, we're going to wait and see who else does it first, not just Elevation. And then if it catches on, we'll jump on. And I think that's the same thing with AI. I really do.
And so this is where, this is like been my whole thought on the entire thing. And if I could like boil down everything I have on AI to this is I want to be the person who evolves first. Like,
Yeah.
and even as I say the word evolve is like evolution, mark of the beast again. Okay. I just, the mark of the beast, just keep the tally at the bottom of the pod. But like evolve or die. Like we need to evolve. Like there are people who are early adopters, and the early adopters are the ones who learn it quickest and so I don't think that we should try to like, eliminate AI or segregate AI to like this other world that like this world uses that and the church world we're set apart. Well, I don't think we should eliminate it or segregate it to another world, but I think we should try to figure out as the church what are we and where can we integrate this into our workflow? Where can we do what only we can do as the church, but integrate this into every aspect of our workflow so that we can do what only we can do better. That's what AI is now allowing us to do. It's doing. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I think you're hitting the nail on the head in work. We're really getting to a fine point here of maybe the base fear that a lot of people think about AI and sermons is, oh no, I'm about to get replaced.
Yeah. And honestly, I literally, as I was doing research for this, I went into ChatGPT and I was like, give me 10 objections to why Christians wouldn't like AI being used. And one of the things was that it would take away jobs from Christians. And honestly, I've heard that like from, especially like just from good old good people is like every time we technologically advance, more jobs are taken. It's like, no, different jobs are created. We just need to evolve. We need to keep moving. So it's just another piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so it also makes me think, I think people are afraid I'm going to get replaced, or I think a lot of, and hear me say, I'm 30 years old. I've been in ministry for 10 years, only because I got to start early, and I've been exposed to amazing churches, amazing culture, all of those things. I got to preach in big rooms, probably way too soon. So I've been preaching for a decade in kids ministry environments, in student ministry environments. And I think maybe some seasoned leaders are thinking, every young leader is going to get to shortcut the process that took me so long of actually how to craft that perfectly put together sermon. And now in 5 minutes with a really good refined search or prompt, they're going to get this pristine John MacArthur level, like John Piper, or whoever their hero is. I know that's pretty like Reformed camp or, I don't know, pick whoever, Pastor Chris Hodges or Levi Lusko or whoever. They think they're going to get this massively like just polished sermon outline and that they're just going to take over. And I just don't think that's the case.
No. Yeah, I read something today. One of the guys I follow, his name's Justin Welsh. I talk about him way too much. But
yeah, you're good friends, right?
I wish. I know you probably listen to this podcast right now.
Justin, if you're listening, go ahead and, man, we'd love to have you on.
But he basically said it takes natural intelligence to actually use artificial intelligence. And so, again, it just becomes a new tool. Like, if you gave a hammer to a child versus a grown man, well, the grown man's going to be able to do more damage or build something bigger with the hammer because he's stronger. And it's the same thing's going to happen. The playing field's going to stay the same. It's just going to give an addition to everybody. And so if you're smart, if you're a good leader, nothing's changed for you. You're still a good leader. You just got a new tool to use.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of truth in that. And I think if you, replace AI with YouTube or with the internet or with the Google search bar or with the
commentaries.
Greek
Bibles, like all these different tools that we have, Logos Bible software and the $44 million a month you have to pay for it. Like,
Yeah, and so again, I think it's always been. I think I mean, even the Bible, nothing's new under the sun, right? And so, if that's true, then we've got to take that in step and in stride. And so, I think with all of those, whether it's commentaries or Logos or Google or YouTube, the fear has always been, okay, people are going to use the tool to maybe shortcut the process, or they're going to use the tool and it's going to lessen the product. But that's never been the case.
No.
Like you actually have to get really good at using the tool to be effective.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could go out and detassel corn by hand, grew up in Illinois, know what that means. Or someone could big corn guy. Or, someone could say, hey, here's a tractor and you can do this whole field in 3 hours. But I don't know how to drive a tractor, And so it's like, okay, well, I could learn how to drive the tractor. I could learn how to use the tool and get proficient. And, or it's just, I don't know. And with where it's at right now, to be honest, like it's not great writing. Like it's good.
Yeah.
But it's not great. It's not blowing me away.
No, you can definitely tell that this is like maybe if you're reading like something from like a real like vanilla website, you might not think it was AI. But like if you're like a personality or you're, a personal brand or something like that, it's obvious that it's not in your own voice. Now, what's crazy is that, these things are all improving. And so it's going to be able to learn your voice too. So you might be able to, and people are already doing this to where like, let's say I had 50 Stephen Furtick sermons and I go in, I import all those into an AI. It now could be able to write and talk and transcript things like Stephen Furtick would. That's where we're at. That's what's already being done, just not on like a consumer level where you and I would do it. But it's still it's just going to, again, it's going to let the best people just rise to the top. Like still, there's going to be a culture of merit. There's going to be a meritocracy that the people who put in the most work are going to get the most reward.
Absolutely. I was talking to a student pastor, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, and I said, hey, I'm using some AI for some stuff. You're going to get an email. Most of that email is going to be written by AI. I'm testing it out. Want to understand it. We're going to be doing some content on it. Sent it to him, and he was like, man, that looked incredible. But it scares me because I think he's always scared. It makes me nervous because I think it can be a great tool, but I think it also could be a tool in the hand of the enemy. And here's what I want to say by that. Tell me how AI is different than YouTube. Because, a young preacher can sit down and watch a Stephen Furtick sermon, and let's be honest. Let's just come clean. We've all freaking done it. We've all sat in front of YouTube, watched a sermon, and been like, that was good. I'm going back and I'm writing down specific lines, or I'm ripping illustrations, or I'm like, that text is good. I like their interpretation of it. You can't tell me when you're a young preacher you never did that, and if you didn't, you're better than me. Okay? Yeah. More
confession live on the podcast. I have paid for an Andy Stanley transcription to be done, and I preached it word for word. Now, I said at the beginning that this was a message from somebody else, but it was that good, and because it was basically he was sharing a story that was like 20 minutes long, and I shared the story word for word, and it was probably the best sermon I ever preached.
Don't let the Conservative Baptist Network hear that.
Hey, I made sure and I referenced him. I gave him my footnotes there, CBN.
He said, I gave credit where credit's due.
I'm still eligible to be the Southern Baptist Convention president one day.
No doubt. Okay, to come clean, I have never cited. I remember, dude, when I was young and I had to lead and I had to preach at the same time. And it's like, I don't know. I need some inspiration. I need the lightning bolt. I need a moment. So I think, okay, sure. AI can be a tool in the hand of, a servant of God and the serpent and the devil and the accuser, right? But so is YouTube. So has Google. So has, the internet. So is Logos. Anything. And so to just dismiss it because it can be used by the devil, and I'm not saying that that's what this student pastor said.
No. I'm
He's a great guy. He's very much a part of the SSM community. He's probably watching this podcast. He would laugh if he heard us talking about this. But I am saying I think that's what a lot of people are doing. So here's what I want to do. I think we've kind of come to this. Okay. AI mimics human intelligence, much like
Yeah.
AI drives a car. AI can do research, it can pull things together, it can write, it can compile, and it can give a great sermon outline. And so here's what I want to do. Okay, well, let's talk about the things that AI can do and be a tool that's really helpful. And then let's talk about the things that the flesh and blood preacher is always going to be only able to do. So, what can AI used rightly, used correctly, not used as a bad tool like maybe even YouTube or the internet or commentaries or any of the other stuff that we've talked about have been used in the past? How can we use AI in a God honoring, building into our congregation, spirit filled way? What can we do?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm kind of on the I usually don't buy like the year plan of subscriptions. I buy the month and like try something for a month and try to mess around with it. And so I've been doing this for the past few months. I've been trying to figure out where we can integrate different things at our church and into our business as well. And so I'll just give you a few examples. So this morning, this is the freshest one in my mind. This morning I was prepping a sermon. I'm preaching on Daniel 6. Daniel Lion's Den, and so I was jumping into the text, and Daniel 6:1 talks about King Darius. Okay, and so I remember King Darius. I also remember big in Daniel's King Nebuchadnezzar. I remember that there's the Chaldeans, there's the Babylonians, there's the Persians, there's the Medes, there's all these kind of different cultures that are converging into these few chapters here. So honestly, I was at a coffee shop, didn't have a bunch of books with me. I didn't, a Google search is going to send me down a long rabbit trail. So I typed in this morning, a litany of questions. And so, like, literally, I asked ChatGPT, and I'll read a few of them. I got a few of them here on my iPad. I asked ChatGPT just this morning. I said, okay, what was the culture of Babylon like during Daniel's time? It spit out 3 paragraphs. Okay, so then I just kept going down a deep dive. I said, who is King Darius and how did he reign over Babylon? Gives me a whole deep dive on it. How did the succession from King Nebuchadnezzar to Darius take place? And it just, and so I'm asking, what's the difference between the Babylonians, the Neo-Babylonians, and the Medo-Persian Empire? And it gave me all these different things. So I went and I looked at, because it doesn't reference sources, even though there's DeepMind is coming out with one that references sources. But I went and just started to cross-reference that with other sources to see if it was legit. And it was spot on everything. So you look at Daniel 6, it talks about how the person who succeeded Cyrus the Great was Belshazzar. Okay. Well, Belshazzar is nowhere in the history books. He's only mentioned as the king in the Bible. And so I asked ChatGPT, who was Belshazzar? It says in the Bible, this is who Belshazzar was. And then it goes down this list about how historically we have no record of it. Okay. So just mind blowing how accurate it was. So that was one way, just with sermon prep, of just simply using this. And I asked it probably 18 questions and I learned so much. I mean, I learned so stinking much that I had remembered from my ancient Near Eastern history classes and my Old Testament classes, but it just brought it back to the forefront of my mind so much quicker than me diving into all these books. And I was able to do what usually would have taken me 3 or 4 hours to review. I was able to do in 10 to 15 minutes. So that's one way. And I got several others if we want to get into them. But when it comes to just simply historical prep, man, that was so easy to help me just start my study this morning.
So, okay, let me go off on this for a second and we can get to the other ways. And my senior pastor has a PhD. Okay, he's a brilliant man. He's been preaching for a long time. I said, Pastor, what? Yeah, Pastor Chris Kuba, he's incredible. Follow him on Instagram. He would hate that I'm doing this because he doesn't like that stuff. But follow him on Instagram. Look him up. He's amazing. And I said, hey, Pastor, what is your biggest beef? Or I can't remember exactly how I worded it. I think I said something like, what's your biggest problem with young preachers? And he said, my biggest problem with young preachers is they skip, that I'm afraid that they don't love the prep as much as they love the performance.
Yes.
And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, I think young preachers, and I felt kind of, maybe he was talking to me. I don't know, PC, if you're watching this, I repent. Okay. He was like, I think young preachers spend a lot of time making sure their point is sticky and rhymes and is memorable. And they're preaching for the sound bites, which even he said is not all bad, right? Because it's great to have sticky, memorable sermons. But he said, but I think they cut the prep time short. So here's my point. Is what you just described not a fix to that? Yeah. That in 15 to 20 minutes, I can be faithful to the context of the text.
Yeah.
And so not shortcut the prep. And the other side of that is, I'll say this. I would love an AI that actually sourced it, and said, hey, here's the source.
Yeah.
And like you said, AI is coming out with that. But the other thing is, it don't matter to me whether I got it from a book or a Google link or AI said it to me in chat form, because it's the information I'm after, not the mode. And I know I'm getting fired up here, so I'm going to try and calm down a little bit. But I feel like so many times we crucify the mode instead of the content.
Yeah.
And so it's like we want to crucify AI, but it's just telling us what's in the books. Hey, dude, hey, listen to me. It's just telling you what your Google search is telling you, but it's just not making you have to search through 3 different pages to find
I could go to my
link.
library and get stacks of books that cost me a lot of money to do, and then a lot of time, which is also costing your church money.
I was going to say, are we talking about a stewardship issue here? Like, what's better? Like, if you're a senior pastor, you're an executive pastor, what would you rather? And I don't know, because I'm not a senior pastor. I'm not an executive pastor. Maybe I never will be.
One of the arguments that somebody made to me was like, how are you even going to, are you not going to, not know how to think anymore? Is it going to become so second nature to you that you're not going to be able to think for yourself? But, dude, I learned so much in that, one chat thread this morning than I would have probably from the book, because I probably would have given up. And then also, you could say the same thing about a book. Well, because you didn't go to the original, you didn't go visit Israel. You didn't go see the Garden Tomb. How would you know it's there? You only read about it in a book. You only did it with a guy.
And that argument doesn't scale, right? It's never scaled. I remember my high school Algebra 2 class, and my teacher got up and said, you need to learn how to do this, because you're never going to live in a world, and everyone has a story like this. You're never going to live in a world where you always have a calculator in your pocket. And guess what? The iPhone.
Cap. We got it.
And now even when you look at, YouTube, and I don't know the stat, and we'll maybe link it someplace or whatever, but I think for a while YouTube was competing, if not the higher rated search engine than Google.
Yes, it is the number one search engine amongst Gen Z.
And so if you want to learn how to replace a headlight in a car, you can YouTube it and watch a 3-minute video, and you can do it. Now, here's my question. Did they cheat? Did they shortcut the process? Or are they just enhancing productivity? And so I think right now, today, January 17th, I'm pro AI because I think it's a stewardship issue.
Yeah.
And I think if I can be better, faster, and intake more information, then I'm saving my church money. I'm being more productive, for my leadership, and I'm stewarding the giftedness that God has given me, because I'm saving my green zone from being drained by some of the stuff that necessarily,
what do you mean your green zone, Patrick?
Yeah, okay. And so my green zone is my high energy zone, the times where I'm my best. And so if I have to spend, the time that I'm my best is from 5:30 a.m. to probably about 9:30 a.m. Okay. But if I have to spend that time flipping through books, and I love books, or, combing through Google research or whatever, I'm just dead. I would rather spend 30 minutes of that time having a conversation with AI, learning about Darius, learning about Daniel, learning about Babylon, learning about Mesopotamia, taking that, and then bringing a faithful hermeneutic to the text.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing that's good.
Yeah.
So
So what's maybe another way? I
yeah,
mean, okay, so maybe one way that I've seen it is just some statistical research. So or actually last Wednesday, I was preaching a message called "Here's Holy," and basically was starting with the tension of like, man, you just ever felt like you're not good enough, and really led with the tension, that 84% of Gen Z would identify as being emotionally or mentally broken or damaged.
jeez.
And I learned that from Chat GPT. And I just said, what's the number one issue facing Gen Z? And it gives me all this stuff. And in it is a stat about how 84% of Gen Z in a recent poll identified as being mentally or emotionally damaged. And so I said, so I know the tension in the room tonight is that you don't feel good. But let me preach Isaiah 6 to you and about how God reached out and made an unholy thing holy so that way you could say, here am I, send me.
Yeah.
And dude, 5 students got saved that night. And I'm not saying that's because of me or Chat GPT. I'm just saying, okay, well, like there it is, like it worked, and I didn't have to go combing through that. I don't even know where I would find that. And so other than a Google search. And so I'm finding a lot of use right now in like prompts, stats, telling me about the culture, telling me about a specific niche kind of area that I'm not an expertise in.
Yeah.
And even illustrations.
Yeah. Dude,
you ever hit a blank
illustrations.
spot?
Yes,
Ooh.
we did. Me and our student pastor here, he was trying to connect, and I forget what it was, but he was trying to connect this illustration. And so we just started going down a rabbit trail on ChatGPT, and we came up with an illustration. And it just kept kind of adjusting. And he was like, all right, I got it. I'm going to use it. And I mean, it's just, it's wild. We talk about, ChatGPT. One more thing I'll say on ChatGPT. Another thing that it can do for you really quickly is listing scripture references.
Yeah.
So I was working on this message and I told ChatGPT, and this is in our newsletter. I said, list all the references in the ESV translation of Jesus waking up early in the morning to pray. It spits out all of them right then and there. I would have had to gone to so many terrible websites from a Google search in order to find that, or I would have had to thumb through all of the different text. So ChatGPT, who knows how long it's going to stay free. It's about to get integrated into every AI tool that there is. There's so many more tools out there, though, that you can use. And ChatGPT is just the free one that we're all playing around with right now. That is so fun. So a few tools, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so there's a really great transcription tool that I think most pastors should have, and it's called Otter, okay? Otter AI. So basically, you can input a video file, you can let it listen to you preach, and it's going to transcript your sermon. Let me tell you something I did with it the other day. We had a content brainstorm with our teaching team. And so basically a content brainstorm for us is 16 weeks out from the beginning of the message series. We get together, we bring passages of scriptures, concepts, and we just begin to kind of talk about what you start brainstorming around what some of the messages could be.
Right.
And so I hit record on my laptop. There's 5 of us sitting around the table. Okay, at the end of that meeting, I stop it. It transcribes the meeting. It knows my voice from my pastor's voice, from our student pastor's voice, because it's learned who we are. And so we assign it a name, and then it spits out a transcription, okay? So what I did then is I went and I put it into a tool called WordTune. And so WordTune is a big summarizer. So it took this hour-long transcript, and it summarized it down, and it brought out all the key points. Then I took it from there, put it into ChatGPT, and had it write me an essay on it, had it write me a executive summary, had it write me 10 takeaways, and then I compiled that into a document, and I sent it over to my pastor to say, hey, here is some stuff. As you're prepping your messages, here's some content for you to look over.
Now, how long did that take you?
15 minutes. And it'll take me 3 minutes next time because I know what I'm doing.
And the thing, again, I go back to stewardship, man. Like that might scare you. That might be like, my job's at risk. Well, not if you learn how to use it really well.
Yeah. If you learn to evolve, your job is never at risk. If you stay complacent, don't expect to keep a job. Like you have to evolve. You have to keep going. And so Otter is an easy one. Sorry if I hurt somebody's feelings there.
Definitely did.
Another one, this is one I've been using. I use this today. Let's say you don't want to listen to the 3-hour interview. You don't want to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. You don't want to listen to our podcast. You just want the summary. You lazy son of a gun. I'm just kidding. You're not lazy. It's a stewardship issue. I get it.
We love you. It's great.
Gosh. No. So there's this free AI tool called Summarize Tech. And so all you do is you literally go in and you put in a YouTube. You go in and you put in a YouTube link. And it summarizes the video for you with timestamps. So I had a message that I wanted to reference some parts in it. I didn't want to listen to the whole thing. Popped it right in. Broke out the message summary. I was able to find those things so much quicker. There are all kinds of tools, and there's new tools being produced like monthly, weekly probably. Startups that got venture capital behind them. And a lot of them, their model is they want to get you hooked. So it's going to be free for a time. And so I am geeking out on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And, maybe a softer way to land your sentiment is, when growing things stop growing, they get outgrown by the things around them that are growing. And then you stick out, right? And so, our next gen pastor told me that as an intern. He looked at me one day and said, Pat, if you're not growing and everyone else is, you're going to begin to stick out. And you're going to stick out because everyone's outgrowing you. And I think it's the same thing with tools and technology and, and everything. I think it's the same. And so, we got to use these tools, in my opinion. It's a stewardship issue. It's how can I do my job better and at a better pace? And really, here's the thing, dude. I mean, how many guys have we talked to? And it's like, man, I'm spending, and I want to say this in a respectful way, but I'm spending 16, 20 hours a week prepping a sermon. In love, if you're not the senior pastor, nobody needs to be spending that much time sermon prepping. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of that, it's a little bit like, okay, well, here's the deal. If your sermon at 6 hours is like a 7 out of 10, and then you go to 8 hours and it's still a 7 out of 10, then stop at 6 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. The law of diminishing returns is so key. Is like, you don't spend, so much energy to make it perfect. That's pride. That's pride wrapped in you're trying to please God. And, God is pleased when we're faithful with the time he's given us. The most freeing words were from the Craig Rochelle podcast that came out a few months ago. He just said, Gitmo, good enough to move on. This will help your sermons move faster. So this stuff will help everything you do move faster. So that way you can move on to disciple people, to equip leaders, to train the saints, to do the things that AI can't do.
Yeah. Unless you're the senior pastor, it's like we were on a Zoom call. I won't steal the line. We were on a Zoom call, and Jackson White said, sometimes, man, I feel like I'm the student preacher instead of the student pastor. And his whole point was, man, I got to learn to prep faster so I can be with students, so I can be with people. And I just think that's a great sentiment.
That's so
good. We've talked about AI, what it is, why is it feared? It's the unknown. We're not really sure. It's a tool. We've talked a little bit about how it can be used, how we basically think it's a stewardship issue. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the person. Let's talk about the preacher. What is AI going to never be able to replace? Why is the physical flesh and blood preacher essential and necessary? And what is AI never going to get to take away from sermon prep that we have to stay faithful to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, no matter how good AI gets, AI is never going to get to know your people. You know exactly where you're at. You know your people. You know what they're going through. Sure, AI can know like segments of a population, but the Holy Spirit puts on your heart things that only your elders, only your local church context can address.
Right.
And so it's never going to be able to do that. It's also never going to be able to reflect the heart of God. And so it's going to it's going to be able to tell you what the same amount of things that if you're reading a Sam Harris book could tell you.
Right.
If you don't know who Sam Harris is, he's one of the most devout atheists, and he's a brilliant thinker. I mean, he's great to read, but he's an atheist. And so this is not necessarily, I'm not saying this is like some atheistic thing, but it's going to convey information. It's not going to convey meaning. And I think that's key. We at computers get info. Right? Souls understand meaning. So you, no matter, I mean, everything that you do, whether you're pulling it from a commentary, you're pulling it from AI, has to be led by the Holy Spirit. It has to align with God's word. It has to reflect the meaning of the original authorial intent of the text. And so all of those things kind of help you get to those, but it's only the Holy Spirit that can produce that. And then I think also just kind of the practical things is, your number one job as a pastor is not to preach. Your number one job is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry.
That's right.
So if it helps you preach so that you can do more of the equipping of the saints, or if it can help you scale your content process so you can equip the saints, you still have to equip the saints. No amount of automation is going to be able to do that. No amount of automation can replace your presence in your
content. Good. That's so good. Yeah, I think, Chat GPT may be great, but it's never going to be connected to the Holy Spirit. And, for me, preaching is prophecy. And before you get too spooked out there, you look at the Old Testament, what's prophecy? The messenger of God gets a word from God in God's timing for God's people. And is that not what he's called preachers to do? Right. And so our job is to connect with God and get a word from his word, from revelation from the Spirit, from him moving our hearts, and to deliver that word on time. And I think that's something that we could do a podcast on that, maybe has been lost in the capital C church, at least in the West, to God's people. And, Chat GPT is never going to tell you what the Holy Spirit wants you to do. And so you can't replace a connection with Holy Spirit. John 15 is still true. Abide in me and I in you. Without me, you can do nothing. Mm-hmm. And so you may have all the facts and you may have like a really good polished opener and all that stuff. But we've all listened to sermons that just, didn't have the punch, and I've heard some mediocre content, but with the power of God behind it, and it's changed my life. And so I don't think AI or YouTube or Google or any tool for that matter is ever going to take the place of what the Holy Spirit, is going to do. And so, you still have to do the ministry of getting before the Lord and making sure that God is taking you someplace so you can take the people someplace. But I agree with you. If AI can help you scale your preaching so you can Ephesians 4 and you can equip saints for the work of the ministry, then I think it's a stewardship thing. I think you should do it. But it's never gonna replace divine connection. And like you said, it's never gonna replace your relational connection with your people.
Yeah.
And the other side, at least for now, it doesn't write that great. And so it's going to crank you out something, you can get up and read it, but it's just not going to feel right, so we're not there. Are we going to get there? Sure. I think we will, but not right now. And so I think it's an incredible tool, and I think it's one that should be utilized in preaching. And I don't think it's going to replace the preacher. I think it's only going to enhance what's already there.
Yeah.
Just like other stuff, it's just going to enhance you.
Yeah, AI doesn't replace the preacher. It just is going to enhance the preaching. That's good.
Yeah. And, so build simple strategies around that. I think it's good for all of us to go back and look and just say, okay, well, hey, what tools are available to us? And am I using those tools? It would be like, man, hey, frame a house, and here's a hammer and a nail, and here's a nail gun. Which one are you going to pick?
Yeah.
You're not going to say you shortcutted the process by using a nail gun. You're going to say, oh, that was smart. That was wise of you to use the tool that was available.
Yeah.
So I think preachers have an obligation to learn it, to become proficient in it. And, to whom much, I wonder, maybe this is a side note too near the end of the podcast, but to whom much is given, what? Much is required. And maybe God has given us, this age and this time and this connection to technology, so that way there can be a generation of preachers who rise up and have an ability to be sharp like never before.
Yeah.
And I think that's a way to look at it as well.
And think about, a lot of us, we create content that is over when they walk out of the room.
Yeah.
And so the beautiful thing about what you can do with AI is you can quickly scale your content now. So what I mean by this, we are great content creators as preachers. We sit down and we write a 40-minute talk. That's roughly when I transcribe my message, that's roughly about 12 pages of content for me in a 40-minute talk if you're preaching to adults. Don't preach to your students for 40 minutes. So what I can do now is I can take that and I can put that into Otter, and now I have a whole, I can turn that into 10 different blog posts. I could turn that into 100 different tweets. I can drop those tweets, or I can drop that content into Quillbot and have it paraphrased or lengthened or simplified. And so now I've created all these other pieces. All right. I'm also able to turn it into reels. And so I'm able to put it into YouTube and quickly figure out with AI what type of headline is going to be the best on the SEO. You're scaling your content. Again, you are now taking what you worked so hard on and actually helping it live beyond just the 30 minutes that you preached it. It's just simple strategies through a scalable system.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, at the end of the day, if planning to preach is holding you back from people, whether you use AI or not, you got to take another look at your system.
Yeah.
Unless you're the senior pastor, and no one's getting paid to just preach. And so I don't think that job exists. Even senior pastors aren't getting just paid to preach. And so there are people they have to develop. Well, hey, for this episode, all about preaching in AI, we would be remiss if we didn't tell you that there's a way for you to plan better so you preach better. I think the truth is that there are so many communicators who love to preach, but they just hate to prep. We have a new course that launches. It's in pre-sale right now. It launches, and it's all about planning better so that way you can preach better sermons. And if you find yourself communicating, man, we think that this is going to be something that is full of simple strategies, full of scalable systems that you can use. We've personally used it for over 10,000 minutes of preaching, maybe even a year combined. 50. We've used it over a decade, and we know it works. And so we want to make that available to you in that course. Encourage you to check it out and find out how you can begin to plan better so that way you preach better. Because when you plan better, you preach better. When you preach better, your ministry grows. We know that for a fact. Landon, thanks for being with me, dude. I'm glad the podcast has become a reality. Thank you for joining and watching. Any closing ideas on AI and preaching?
Hey, don't forget, be the early adopter, evolve quick, because if you'll learn it now, you'll be ahead of everybody when everybody else jumps in.
That's golden. I can't go on that anymore. Be saying the same thing. So check AI out for yourself. Man, we will link to some things. Thank you so much for watching, and we can't wait to see you for episode 2 of the Simply Strategic Ministry Podcast.